What is going on there, Reject Nation? We're at Cinemark right now, talking into our phones for better audio because we don't have lav mics like how most professional people do. Love coming to Cinemark to watch these movies. I mean, guys, look, just follow me with this camera. Let's do a little circle here. Look how beautiful everything is. We love it here so much that we agreed to do a giveaway.
That's right. Congrats, and thank you to everybody who entered because we got a lot more submissions.
What are their
than we
names?
even expected, and the 4 winners as of now. Unless there's some reason
we
you
can't
didn't.
be too loud in here. There are people watching movies. Be respectful to Cinemark.
_D786 persons username 63 Presley.rise or Rees and Bastien _Saucy.
Now you guys go enjoy yourselves.
Yeah.
A good, delicious Cinemark movie.
Yeah, make sure you tag Cinemark and thank them for the experience.
And don't sell them.
Don't
and if you do, sell them
them
back to us.
Yes,
we'll buy
please.
them.
We will buy them for a higher price than you got them for.
All right, guys, so we just saw Halloween Kills, and you know what? I think I went in with the exact right expectations for this movie. I watched I watched the last Halloween.
Careful there.
Yeah. I watched the previous Halloween again yesterday, which I really like a lot. I think I liked it more the second time watching it. And then going into this one, you know, I saw what people, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I saw what everyone was saying on Rotten Tomatoes. I read all the capsules. I was just too curious to know what they had to say, right? It did prep me exactly for the experience I was walking into. I gotta say, you know, when you see something that's like a 58% and you're hearing all the common criticisms for it, and then you watch it, I was like, actually, this was better than what I was led into. I don't think it's as focused as the first Halloween movie is, like the previous one. You know how this talk goes. 2018 one had a really solid like build up to Michael Myers versus Laurie Strode. It has a certain type of like personality to it, where there's a natural kind of fun that movie's having. This one has a bit more of a darker, more grim approach to it, and there's a lot of things thematically they want to explore because they got like a bunch of different characters they're focusing on this time, and Laurie Strode is actually kind of taking a bit of a back seat this time around. She is not doing so well due to injuries she's sustaining, so she's kind of just in the hospital a lot, and there's a much bigger cast of characters going on in here. The characters you focus on way more here than you do even Laurie Strode. It's more violent. Honestly, before going into any more specifics, I'll say that by the end of it, I like it more than Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, so it's a pass for me.
Sure. All right, yeah.
I did a dig at that just for John.
I'm not going to fight you. I know that I am in an uphill battle with Halloween 2. Yeah, this was an odd experience, I think, and I didn't read as much, but I did read a little bit beforehand. The main thing that struck me about this movie is how torn it left me feeling, because the tone is still pretty naturally on par with the previous movie, and the way that they're trying to infuse those, you know, lingering 70s stalkery shots with a more modern, you know, grim and rough sensibility. Yeah, I liked almost all the themes they were going for, and I thought that kind of the further the movie got, the more chaotic and muddy everything became, and I feel like in some ways that complements the actual action and themes that are happening in the story, but as a viewing experience, certain elements of the plot started to plateau and get repetitive in a way that doesn't help a slasher movie and that isn't repetitive in the way slasher movies maybe ought to be. I liked a lot of the different performers and stuff like that. There are a lot of really cool gore effects and things like that. It is, yeah, like I think Michael is best when he is in a grim and mean and angry kind of movie. This definitely has that. I just wish that it could have maybe paid a little more mind to its characterization of a lot of the characters and let them breathe. By a certain point in the movie, there's just a common slogan, monologue catchphrase everybody starts to say, and it does become kind of cartoony. And there are elements of the overall action that I could really feel the third movie forcing a kind of pulled punch on, for lack of a better way to phrase that.
They have a good setup for the third one to make it feel even more personal, I'd say.
Well, and my favorite part of this movie was like the last 10 or 15 minutes. That was like when everything really coalesced and I was like, this is the sequence I've been waiting for this whole movie. And I wish the rest of the movie didn't feel like it had to pull so many punches to get there, because the tone is like way more menacing than some of the actual realities being depicted on screen.
That's so fascinating to me because they have a few things going on here that I really did like. As you see in the trailer, the town of Haddonfield is really rising up against the boogeyman this time around. And there are plot points there that I feel like people in the greater Los Angeles area might be conflicted in. When you look at it through that lens, you're like, this is kind of ridiculous. I feel like anyone who's ever, I've never lived in a small town city, but I've known a lot of people who've lived in small town cities, and I imagine, and I heard it from even the people, I had the thought validated from many people at our screening today. If you're from a small town city, this is 99.9% likely how they're going to behave and react. And I really like how they played into like the mob mentality, the horde mentality, and how that feeds into like the evil begets evil mentality too. They even have like these other plot lines here. Like weirdly, the main character to me, if I were to try to pinpoint the main one, it would be the character of Tommy, who's back here. He seemed like it was more about him than it was about even Laurie this time around. He seems to be like the protagonist who's really leading the charge. And without going into spoilers here, there's a couple who's living in a very familiar house right now, and I thought they were weirdly enjoyable. I do think though that I really thought was repetitive and a bit like annoying. It seemed like every scene other than maybe one was just all talking about Michael Myers. like every scene is just about Michael Myers, and like the dialogue never felt like, not, I wouldn't say never, there are parts where they get more explorative with it and they do enhance the movie, but a lot of times it just feels like you're either recapping a bunch of things I already know by now, or you're kind of just reiterating things I've heard a gazillion times in this movie alone already.
They establish a cycle where there's this kind of scene that does to me feel like it keeps repeating, where it's like the build to a crescendo and the movie needs to hold that crescendo. There's so many scenes where you get the intense monologue that feels like it's about to lead to a big action. Everybody steps up and has their moment to go. It's been 40 years. Michael's been terrorizing this town. Well, no more. It ends tonight. Evil dies tonight. And like so many people get that monologue and scenes that are all built to emotionally resonate the same kind of way, which is we're taking it to the streets, except we keep building to taking it to the streets like multiple times throughout the movie, and then it takes a while to actually feel like we really got there in a way that's cathartic and that, you know, matches. I feel like if they had swapped out some of those writ large monologues for things that were more personal, built upon the relationships shared by people in these small towns, that could have been nicer and maybe expounded upon some of the characters we don't know as well as the beloved ones.
Yeah, well, it's because they're exploring some new themes here, and they're also introducing a bunch of characters. They're reintroducing a bunch of characters on top of that, and of course you got to amp up the thrills and the kills and all that. I mean, one element to this movie that I really thought was actually missing was that it really wasn't scary at all, and it felt like it wasn't even really attempting to actually be scary. It was kind of tense, but I was more like fascinated than it was actually like finding things really tension-filled or scary. Here's the thing though, what I found very interesting watching this movie. With the previous Halloween, my favorite parts are easily Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers. Easily my favorite parts. And in this one, my favorite character, Michael Myers. And it was actually interesting to watch because I was like, every time he's on screen, I am gripped by this. Like, I think they've done such a good job in this franchise. Freaking Michael Myers has this quality to him that often gets kind of made fun of because he is technically a human being, yet he has this supernatural aspect. And thematically, this franchise seems to slowly be building him up into the supernatural entity arena the way we build him up in our mind and how that kind of manifests into a real physicality for Michael Myers. What I wish this movie had was that other just protagonist counterpart that brought the balance for Michael Myers to the point of how like the previous one brought a Laurie Strode, like that's our hero, that's our villain, you know?
Yeah.
And then Hero was like, I really love the villain. There's not really a protagonist I'm in love with though.
It would have been nice to have a true counterweight or counterpart to him, because Michael is, like the dark core that grounds
way more violent.
everything.
Way more violent.
Yeah, it's violent and nasty.
It's nasty, it's disgusting.
You know, it's intimately mean.
Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's just disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, it's pound for pound. If you just want the kills and you want the menace and the grit, it's definitely got that stuff.
Shit, you know, I'd give it a pretty solid recommendation.
Go see it. It's all right. Like I I'm more. It's weird. I feel very torn, but I still had a good time.
Yeah, I'm not so torn. I think my expectations were just set just right for it. It gave me what I expected and it gave me what I wanted. There are things that I wish they did infuse more. But honestly, I think for a part 2 to a slasher movie, especially after watching the previous one and then going into this one, I think it's a really solid second chapter. And I feel like they actually have a really good direction of where they want this trilogy of the Halloween films to go, especially by the way this movie ends. I'm under the impression that if they do a good job with part 3, they'll actually make part 2 even better. So
hopefully.
I'm under the impression they'll do that. So honestly, I think it's a really good second chapter. Whereas I feel like the first one felt like a good complete film. This feels like a middle chapter to something bigger. I'm weirdly I'm all for it. I quite enjoyed it. I don't know. I like these more than the ones before, to be honest with you guys.
I think that's ultimately the thing I'm torn on, is whether or not, like, if Halloween Ends doesn't come out and make some of the things I griped about in this one a little better, then I will know ultimately. So yeah, it's weird. There are things that just don't feel like they'll be complete until the next one.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? Thanks so much for being here. Check out Cinemark. Subscribe to Halloween Kills.
And Evil Dies Tonight.